In Baltimore, on October 3, 1849, Joseph W. Walker, a compositor for the Baltimore Sun newspaper, was heading to a local tavern to cast his vote on Election Day when he came across a delirious man lying in the street's gutter, dressed in tattered old clothing that didn't fit him well. To Walker's surprise, the man turned out to be Edgar Allan Poe. Concerned for the writer's health, Walker asked Poe if there was anyone he could contact for help. Poe gave Walker the name of Joseph E. Snodgrass, a magazine editor with some medical training. Walker immediately wrote Snodgrass a letter asking him for his assistance. "Dear Sir, there is a gentleman rather the worse for wear at Ryan's Fourth Ward Polls who goes under the cognomen of Edgar A. Poe, and who appears in great distress, and he says he is acquainted with you. He is in need of immediate assistance. Yours in haste, Joseph W. Walker." Poe was last seen on September 27th when he left Richmond, Virginia to edit some poetry for another writer in Philadelphia. He never made it to his destination. While in Washington College Hospital, he never regained enough consciousness to explain what had happened to him and spent his final days suffering from visual hallucinations. According to Dr. John Moran, on the night before his death on October 7th, 1849, Poe repeatedly called out for Reynolds, an unknown figure that remains a mystery to this day. Edgar Allan Poe was buried the next day, on October 8, 1849, in an unmarked grave in the back corner of Westminster Hall and Burying Ground in Baltimore. Poe's cousin, Nielsen Poe, purchased a white Italian marble headstone for Edgar, but it was destroyed after a train derailed and crashed into the monument yard where it was being held. Poe was placed in a cheap coffin that lacked handles, a nameplate, cloth lining, or a cushion for his head. Few showed up for the ceremony, which only lasted 3 minutes, and the attending reverend decided not to give a sermon because the crowd was too small. Shortly after his death, Rufus Griswold, Poe's literary rival, wrote an obituary characterizing him as a morally bankrupt, drunken womanizer. As Griswold also wrote the first biography of Poe, his biased portrait formed the basis of Poe's image in the public mind, though later scholars concluded that Griswold's version of Poe's debauchery was highly exaggerated. Newspapers listed Poe's death as congestion of the brain, which was a euphemism for alcohol poisoning. Poe was known to visit bars occasionally, where he would drink heavily with friends. Some say he was a lightweight when it came to drinking, and could become drunk from just one drink. Historians question if Poe could have been wandering the street in a drunken state when he crossed the path of hooligans that robbed, beat, and left him for dead. However, many of Poe's friends and family dismissed the claims that his death was the result of alcohol or drug use as rumors. Dr. John Moran, who was the last person to see Edgar Allan Poe alive, claims he did not detect the slightest hint of alcohol on Poe when he was admitted to the hospital. Poe was also a member of the Sons of Temperance at the time of his death, a group that's against the consumption of alcohol. Another popular theory is that Poe fell victim to a crime known as cooping. Cooping involves corrupt politicians paying men to kidnap someone and then forcing that person to vote for the politician multiple times. Cases of cooping would often involve threats of violence and the victim to be drugged and dressed in different clothing each time they voted as a way to fool the voting stations. Some people were also awarded with a free drink of alcohol after placing their vote. A severe beating, drugs, or large consumption of alcohol from voting multiple times could explain the incoherent state Poe was found in, and cooping might explain the dirty old clothing he was wearing. Diseases such as the rabies virus have been attributed to Poe's death due to the similarity in symptoms. While passing through Philadelphia in July of 1849, Poe was exposed to a cholera epidemic and prescribed mercury chloride by his doctor. Heavy metal poisoning became another popular theory, but after tests on Poe's hair showed no sign of mercury or lead poisoning, this theory seems much less likely. Others believe Poe may have succumbed to a brain tumor or lesion on the brain. On October 1st, 1875, Edgar Allan Poe was reburied towards the front of the Westminster Hall Cemetery and given a luxurious new tombstone thanks to the donations and hard work of adoring fans. As Poe's remains were being moved to the new grave nearly 3 decades later, one of the workers claimed that something was rolling around inside Poe's skull. Some believe the mass rolling around inside the skull may have been a tumor that had calcified over the years. Because his remains and official hospital documents, such as the death certificate, have been lost with time, we may never know what happened to Edgar Allan Poe, a man whose death is just as dark and mysterious as one of his very own tales.